Tomas is a thought leader who takes action in order to see results, and he does. He's a connector. He surrounds himself with the right people for the right cause and the right purpose. He fights for victims, survivors, and overcomers of this horrific crisis that we are all knowledgeable about. For 33 years, he has the experience at local, state, and national levels with the human trafficking world. He's also, which he had mentioned earlier, a Rotarian, so hopefully he's just going to join our group as his sidekick. On a more personal note, Tomas partners with Tammy Spence. Some of you may know her from our club, from Inside Out Ministry in Orlando, going into jails, offering rehabilitation to those traffic victims willing to take it. This is how we met Jessica. When I met Jessica through Tammy, I also met Tomas. And by the way, I also came in contact with Sonia, who is on this call. They offer rehabilitation to the traffic victims willing to take it. And they were a big part of what we went through with Jess. He was always there to help her, always. One of their programs includes training, sports leadership teams, and getting them sponsored to help the children of the rescued parents. One such program was created in memorial for Jessica. Recently, United Abolitionists established a new soft room at the Orlando airport. It addresses the immediate needs of human trafficking victims. Airports, as we all know, are a major transit point, making it a strategic location for intercepting and assisting victims. By providing a dedicated space, they offer immediate safety and begin the recovery process for these individuals, significantly improving their chances of escaping the traffickers and rebuilding their lives. I am honored and very pleased to present you with Tomas.
Thank you, Cindy, for those kind words. And it's so great to be with everybody today. I'm going to share my presentation, and let's see. For some reason, okay. Let's see if you can see. Can you see it?
Yes.
Okay, great. So thank you again, Cindy, and everyone for this invitation today. And it's just so great to meet this, your club and all the efforts. I heard a little bit about your history before this meeting started. And so it's an honor to be with you today. My district governor is also present, Sonia Hightower Lavasco, and I'm going to introduce her in a few minutes when we start sharing what we're doing with Rotarians here in the state of Florida. But I just wanted you to, first of all, just to get to know me a little bit. I'll move it down here. So here's one of my favorite quotes: "If slavery is not wrong, nothing is wrong," right? And so I founded our nonprofit in 2009. The former name was Florida Abolitionists, and we did a name change actually in 2019 because our efforts were expanding to other states and countries. But I actually became one of the first victim advocates in the state of Florida back in 2004. I actually celebrated my 20th anniversary last week. And that's when I began to meet various survivors of trafficking through the FBI and also through Department of Health and Human Services and DOJ at that time. But my career started actually in 1990. My first job in college when I came to Florida, I'm originally from Grand Rapids, Michigan, and my parents are from Mexico. So that's a whole nother story too on immigrants and how my family got here and what they experienced. So I came to Florida, 1990. My first job was Big Brother, Big Sister in Polk County. And at that time, as you know, we did not have the term human trafficking or modern slavery. We were not using those terms. And I was seeing children being sold by their parents for drugs. And so that was considered in our maltreatment code child abuse, right? Neglect, you name it. And so through the whole 90s, I worked with abused children that many of them now I know were being trafficked. And so I didn't find out about the issue really of human trafficking until 19, I'm sorry, 2004, like I said, July 2004. Then the light bulb came. I had my aha moment, right? That I was being prepared those 14 prior years because I felt this is what I was called to do, um, probably for the rest of my life, was to stop human trafficking, to end modern slavery. And so that was just a little synopsis on my history. I immediately got involved in Central Florida, trying to find efforts. There were very few back in those days. Um, make a long story short, I had one of the first seminars, and from that was birthed what's now our Space Coast Human Trafficking Task Force over by NASA, Cocoa Beach. 2 years later, I moved to Orlando, excited to join the efforts here. There were none yet. And so began the task force called the Central Florida Human Trafficking Task Force, and began to partner with the vice unit there. We have our own local vice unit called the Metropolitan Bureau Investigation. And I began to receive calls from them saying, in the middle of the night, we think we have a trafficking victim, Tomas. So I would go and meet them. And Cindy, that's how Tammy and I started interacting too back in those days, was because they would usually be arrested, right, back then, even the minors, and end up at the jail. And so began to see that these were not criminals but victims. And so I was able to establish the whole protocol for being victim centered, trauma informed, and trauma responsive to these victims. That now is utilized here, even in our circuits. So that was around 2007, began to place survivors in domestic violence shelters because that's all we had back then. They needed that privacy, right? That confidential location to get away from their trafficker. And so really started just looking at all the gaps. It was overwhelming, as you all probably know, in all your efforts that you've done. People, right, didn't believe it was happening here in our own backyard. It was happening over there, but not here. So there was a lot of hills to climb. In 2009, the FBI asked me to help them. They were believing that there was an increased amount of trafficking, or at least notable during a sporting event. So I had the privilege of being a part of the first Super Bowl outreach against human trafficking in 2009 in Tampa, Florida. It just so happened the next year it was in Miami, so it was a part of that as well. But what we saw was that these traffickers were using, right, hotels, resorts, lodging, to do the nefarious things they were doing. And so that really made us alert that we needed to educate the hospitality and tourism industry, especially here in Florida. And so we began to go from hotel to hotel, literally, and ask if we could train them, educate them on human trafficking. Many said yes, many said no, which made us suspicious. So we actually mapped out the ones that said yes and no to share it with law enforcement to see if it connected to what they were seeing. And indeed it did. A lot of these hotels, motels were really brothels, and they're complicit. We actually have survivors that were here in Central Florida that they would give the room key to the next John to go rape them. And so that made us continue or start advocacy rather in our capital in Tallahassee, that the hotel lodging industry needed to be trained. That finally happened 10 years later. We had, it's mandatory now in the state of Florida for our hotel and lodging industry to be trained on the issue. So I won't go into my history at length, but I just wanted to share with you today some of the best practices we're seeing, And I'm just excited, again, to have Sonia here with us today, my district governor, and how maybe we can interact with your club as well in these coming days. For those who are new, I did include some things that are real fundamental. Let me see. Next slide. So the faces of human trafficking, modern slavery, right? So I'm sure we're familiar with the Declaration of Human Rights, the passage of the Palermo Protocol, right? The common denominators, how we've had to learn to listen and learn, right? Especially from survivors, the distinct differences. The TIP report this year, current stats, which I know it depends on the source, right? We don't rely on those completely. And then the power collaboration and the public-private partnership that we're doing. And by the way, we'll have time for Q&A as well. If you want to start writing questions, please do that as well. Let's see. Okay, next. So definition, just in case anybody is new today, again, and it's hard to see a little bit of this because there's things on the screen. But as we know, human trafficking is a global crime, right, that exploits people for profit. And I just won't go through all that. The organized networks, right, of individuals being trafficked, and defined by the UN Trafficking in Persons Protocol, which supplements the United Nations Convention Against Transnational Organized Crime as a recruitment, transport, transfer, harboring, or receipt of persons by such means as a threat of use of force or other forms of coercion, abduction, fraud, or deception for the purpose of exploitation. So I'm sure we are familiar with that. The foundation, what really moved me was when I learned about the United Nations Universal Declaration of Human Rights. So as we know, this is very key, right, to the fight against trafficking. Like the United Nations itself, the Universal Declaration of Human Rights rose from the ashes of World War II, right? And the aftermath of such unprecedented death and destruction, the world turned to diplomacy to make sure history would not repeat itself, which unfortunately it has. The declaration contains 30 articles, and if you have not read those, please search that online, outlining the most basic rights, including protection against torture, inhumane treatment, cruel punishment, slavery, and servitude. So very important document. The passage of the Palermo Protocol, which a lot of people don't realize, was the same year that the United States passed the TVPA, actually almost a month later, which is adopted protocol to prevent, suppress, and punish trafficking in persons, especially women and children. After 24 years later, 180 states our parties are participating in this to ratify it. And the vast majority of countries in the world criminalize trafficking in persons as defined under international law. So we've come a long way, but we still have a long way to go. Some of the common denominators, make sure I'm not skipping anything, said I've had the privilege of hosting a meeting with over 50 nations, and actually there'll be 15 coming to Orlando tomorrow through our group here in Central Florida called World Orlando, who is partnered directly with the State Department. And I've also this year, I hosted a United Nations women's group from Tajikistan, and I was just amazed. Some of the things that I see that have been similar, no matter where folks come from, the abolitionists come from, the advocates, is they all talk about those vulnerable populations, right, in their communities. How minorities in their state and immigrants are targeted because of those vulnerabilities. So I was happy to hear what Minnesota is doing that was shared earlier. The majority of sex trafficking is women and girls, and the majority of labor trafficking is men and boys. So that seems to be something similar that from all these different delegations that I'm meeting. Some similar challenges include the lack of adequate resources, challenges with governmental buy-in, right? Corruption at the local, regional, and national levels, a lack of collaboration with key stakeholders, There may be competing for the same funding or other issues. Limited staff, thus hindering ability to meet desired objectives. So you can sometimes have just one right investigator in a huge population region, for example. Need for customized training. So everybody saying they need customized training for what their needs may be, right? What their gaps are, what they're seeing on the ground there. So one of the things, friends, that I've learned is that uh, trafficking looks different everywhere I go. Even in Florida, we've mapped out the state of Florida, all 67 counties, as one of our projects, and trafficking from one county to another looks different. Each community has different needs. Maybe they're seeing a different population being trafficked that are coming in, whether again it's adults, minors, foreign-born, domestic, sex or labor trafficking. Um, so this is something that and I'm going to talk about those distinct differences that I think it's really important for us as clubs and as abolitionists that we, first of all, listen and learn, right? And because every community is going to be distinct from the other on their issue, or every country, right? The cultural competence is vital in understanding, right, those distinct values, attitudes, beliefs, and mores that differ across cultures, and to consider and respond appropriately. Combating trafficking priorities will differ based on major variables, including government's resources available and anti-trafficking leadership. And so I've just seen this though across the board, right? From whatever country, whatever area, again, those the heart that I'm hearing here today with y'all, it's the same from whatever country they came from, no matter what type of government they had, religion, was really that heart was this is evil, this needs to stop, and I need to do something. And many feel like it's even a calling on their life. So it's been very amazing to meet so many wonderful abolitionists. The tip report, I don't know if everyone has been able to review that. It is lengthy, comes out every June since 2001. And our State Department is the one who facilitates that across the world. And it's really become not a perfect tool at all, but something that we can at least start from and measure. And it is considered with many of the world's most comprehensive resource for governmental anti-trafficking efforts. So please review that. You can search for that online. Copy is available now. The current stats, and I know this just depends who you go to, but someone that we have gone to for years and trust is the International Labor Organization, which is saying now there's 27.6 million people, right, in forced labor, which they consider victims of forced labor include 17.3 million exploited in the private sector, 6.3 in forced commercial sex exploitation, and 3.9 in forced labor imposed by the state. So they cite their findings on their website. Look at this though. This is what was very interesting, and I don't know if y'all have seen this. The recent generation of funds, they're saying now 236 billion. You know, it used to be 150 billion for a long time of illicit profits every year, and so you know that is in the same range as some of our biggest companies in the world are of revenue are generating annually. So that is alarming, and that increase so dramatically is also alarming. Migrant workers, look at this, are 3 times more at risk of forced labor, and so we know again those vulnerabilities, right, that we can share, and that we all know that puts these people at risk. The power of collaboration. Just wanted to share some of the things we're doing here in Central Florida and some of the things that have been best practices recently. We have an annual forum on human trafficking in Orlando at Valencia College School of Public Safety. And that's where I bring our 27 human trafficking task forces, coalitions, commissions on trafficking that we gather annually. But from that, we communicate daily and collaborate on cases. Trafficker one day may be trafficking somebody in Miami, then they bring them to Orlando. and then to Jacksonville. They have circuits, as you know, even in, we've seen, we did a massage parlor operation with law enforcement 2 weeks ago. That those girls, we had 3 victims come forward. We actually have 8 survivors right now in our diversion program, Mandarin speaking. So we're learning that they're moved around, right, the state and the country, and there's a whole circuit. So we're collaborating and communicating, which is really important. As you know, things can be in silos, even in the federal level with our agencies, but it's very important that there is that cooperation. Not for our, I always tell people, leave your ego and logo at the door, right? We're here for those who are victimized or those survivors. So one of the things that gaps I kept seeing throughout the years, and as I mentioned, we started housing survivors in domestic violence shelters. Then shelters began to be opened both for minors and adults in Florida. But I started noticing that there was no regulation, there was no standards. It became very concerning and almost the Wild West. Somebody would see, for example, a movie that came out and say that they were supposed to start a shelter in their house, not seeing all the things that entail that, and all the protocols and standards that need to be in place. So many victims were re-victimized through that. Cindy knows I'm very passionate about this, that there's houses that probably shouldn't be open, safe houses, because they are re-victimizing the victim. And I'll give you an example. They're making them fundraise for them. One of them that we know of, a week after they're in the program, and tell their stories. Their stories are being used for fundraising. So long story short, that in 2022, we have a statewide council on human trafficking that's chaired by our Attorney General, Ashley Moody. And one of the subcommittees is our services and resources. So they had me come speak in November of 2022. And I told them my concerns that I was seeing all these years. And so I was appointed. We got to be careful, right? What you say, to chair our statewide housing standards working group. So I asked 17 other individuals who I consider experts, including survivors, to be a part of that working group. And we came up in 6 months with what we feel is the gold standard of standards. I had a domestic violence shelter executive director involved, also a sexual assault center, because they already had standards in place for many years that we could learn from. And simultaneously, one of our representatives submitted a bill to correspond with what we were doing. And Senate Bill 1690 was passed, was signed by our governor May of 2023, came into effect July 1st, 2023, so that we could hold a standard that this is not the Wild West, and it's not okay to re-exploit victims. So I'm very passionate about that, as Cindy knows, and others. Also, what happened last year was our University of South Florida has a trafficking in persons lab, and a Senate bill was submitted and passed 7064 to create a statewide repository for anonymous human trafficking data. And also it's going to be a resource center of services for the whole state. This was important. In 2017, I was able to go to the Senate and speak on our efforts in Florida. And one of the things that the senators asked in that meeting was, what does human trafficking look like in my state? What are the numbers? And all that data. And no one from any of the states could say, we don't know. All we have is a national human trafficking hotline where the calls are coming in and those reports, and also from our child welfare, what they're seeing with, domestic minor sex trafficking or CSEC. And so that was something that came back to Florida, made my, what I was seeing known to our authorities, and luckily now we're going to have a centralized database here in the state of Florida. And so most agencies are participating, including those serving minors and adults. And again, there's no survivor information that's given. It's just based on, I could show you the what they're asking to be collected. So private-public partnership and how important this is, and partnerships in Florida. One of the things that we are doing right now is that the Florida Human Trafficking Victims Fund was started by a citizen, initiated partnership with the Florida Sheriff's Association. So as I said, we mapped out all 67 counties. United Abolitionists did so in partnership with the University of South Florida. But now all 67 sheriffs are being educated and funded for their operations against human trafficking by this private group. Then Governor Sonia Hightower Lovasco, District Rotary 6980, initiated with the other 7 governors in Florida to support anti-trafficking efforts across the state. And so, Sonia, I was wondering if you could come and say something, and I'll stop sharing just for a minute, and let's see if we can see your face. Sonia, are you still here?
Tomas, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you now.
Hey, good morning. And look, I know Tomas likes to talk about what he does, but I want to talk to you about why he does it. He does it because he truly wants to stop human trafficking. He truly is at boots on the ground level, from taking phone calls at 2 o'clock in the morning for victim services and trying to place those in need. Maybe when the rest of us are getting some shut eye or relaxing, Tomas is working 24/7. And when I saw that commitment, I said, Tomas is already a Rotarian. He just wasn't in Rotary. So we brought him into the district, and he is now the District 6980 Stop Human Trafficking Chair. He will be chairing all our efforts within the district to stop human trafficking. We've partnered with the other 7 governors throughout the state of Florida, and we've gotten the commitment that they're going to help us with our strategic implementation of partnering with the Florida Sheriff's Associations. How big is that? All 67 sheriffs. We have Rotary clubs in all 67 counties throughout the state of Florida that we're going to go out and we're going to work and help with the strike teams, which Tomas was, it's been so brave in implementing, going out and helping rescue individuals. I mean, this is what has to happen, right? We need actionables. We have to have training and awareness. The number one goal is prevention, right? We hope that we can prevent this from ever happening in the future. But unfortunately, we're not there at this time. We have individuals that are out in our communities, and they're waiting for us to come and get them, right? They're waiting for someone to come and answer that call for help, that plea for help. And Tomas, I can't tell you, he's an incredible human being. I'm honored to know him. He inspires me. He fuels my will to keep going against these heinous crime. I volunteered at one of the safe houses. That's how I met Tomas. I volunteered at a safe house that was not a very good safe house. We end up having to remove 5 young ladies and their children, some of this during Christmas time, from this safe house because it was not regulated. So the passion that he has shown to try to prevent permanent change, right? We need permanent regulation of safe houses. We can never allow our survivors to be re-traumatized the way that they were in the past. So I applaud his efforts for everything that he has done to bring permanent change, to ensure the things that we know that are not right within our community. He is going to fill the gap, and we're going to find a way to make those right. And I hope that other districts, we're willing to share our model of what we're doing here in District 6980. We would be welcoming other districts to jump on board with this. I've also gotten a commitment from the district governor-elect and the district governor nominee. This is going to be a 3-year effort. This is not just one in and one out. We know Rotary changes every year, and each district governor may have a passion or a project they want to work on, but all 3 of the district governors, we've come together and we're going to support this project. And we hope the DGND, when he's elected or she's elected in January, we'll be able to pull them in the fold. So super excited about the work that we're doing in 6980. I trust Tomas immensely. He is going to take us and make this not only a world model, but a multimodal model as well. We're talking about airplanes, trains, buses, Port Canaveral. We have every mode of transportation here that Tomas is going to lay out this amazing plan, and we're just going to follow his lead. So Tomas, you're a wonderful individual. I can't thank you enough for everything you do, and I've got your back, whatever you may need in your efforts.
Well, thank you, Sonia. Well, I didn't expect all that. Thank you. I appreciate the encouragement. We're just, it's about the power of collaboration, and we can't do it individually. I can't. I learn something new every day. I don't consider myself an expert. Don't even like hearing that, because I feel like really as I've seen, as y'all and I know Cindy and the folks on this group are doing this because not for self or ego, right? And I think that's the distinct difference. And those are the people we're aligning with here in Florida is Rotarians, right? Who are doing it to really serve the community, not serve self. So thank you, Sonia. You're just been wonderful in your leadership and getting the whole state unified to fight this. I'm just going to share just a couple of other things, and then I want to open up for Q&A, if that's okay. Let's see. We're navigating this. Okay, for some reason, it's hard to see the, there we go. Right, so that public-private partnership we just talked about that we're doing here in Florida, get involved, right? So customized training and learning, that's what we're asking our community, is to first know what you're getting involved with, right? Be knowledgeable, get informed. We have many different modules that we have created, including customized. As I stated, since that first Super Bowl outreach in 2009, we have a module for the hotel and lodging industry, but we began to create different modules for restaurants. We also are, as Cindy mentioned, we were given a soft room in the Orlando International Airport for years as victims were being identified through our airport. We were going to the Orlando Police Department police station, which looks like a jail, and that is not, in my opinion, that was not victim-centered or trauma-informed. For that victim, they would be thinking they're getting in trouble and would freeze up. And so generously, our Greater Orlando Aviation Authority gave us an in-kind space in the airport, which is actually being decorated and renovated right now by employees from Disney that stepped up to donate everything to make it the most beautiful soft room in the world. And so we're excited. So we've been operating, working with the airport for years, but now we're going to have our own space where we can bring these victims identified by the airlines. We have a train station now here in Orlando. We have our ride shares, we have our rental companies, we have our bus system, which is already a partner and gets trained every year, the bus drivers. So we are on a campaign, as Sonia said, to just, again, customize training. What the front desk of the hotel sees is not the same what our airline stewardess is going to see on those signs. So it's really important that we customize these trainings. We will be coming out with scenario videos, hopefully by January, that we would love to share with y'all, that they're allowing us to film at the airport scenarios, and on a plane, for example, on a train, different things that will be part of someone's training in that sector to kind of get that experience firsthand. Another thing is, of course, initiate action in your community, which sounds like y'all are been doing that for years based on identifying those priorities. And that's why it's so important to know your community, right? And what's the priority there that we're looking at? it's kind of like that Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? Where do we start? Giving time, talent, and treasure to a vetted organization. And again, I'm very passionate. I know Cindy mentioned it in the beginning. Please do your homework on organizations. Just because somebody spoke at somebody's congregation and they're a wonderful speaker doesn't mean they have a wonderful program. Please vet everything that you're doing in your community. Unfortunately, there's always wolves in sheep's clothing. That's all I'll say. And last thing is just united to stop human trafficking. This is what we did with our Sunrail and our bus system in Orlando. And we're about to train Brightline too. That's the new fast train in Florida that we have now. United to stop human trafficking. Some of the red flags of sex trafficking, some of labor. They can do the QR code for training, but we had all the different agencies, law enforcement, federal, state, and local join us on this. And so we are collaborating. It hasn't been easy, but it's been worth it to see lives that are now thriving and not just surviving. So